Okay, so another way to write down a quadratic function is this form here called the standard form. As you can see, what's nice about this form is the vertex you can get easily. The vertex you get is h comma k. Okay, so that's what the vertex is. Although really from our formulas from before, you can actually get the vertex in terms of B and A, right? H happens to be this, and f of h is what the k is. So you can get the vertex easily. If you want to get the other stuff, I mean, the y-intercept is actually pretty easy. Again, you have to calculate f of 0. To get the x-intercepts, I would probably recommend foiling out, the first part here. What's nice about the standard form also is if you want a quadratic function whose vertex is given and you know it has to pass through a certain point, you can get that easily using this form. I mean, you could use the other form to get it, but it's going to take a little more work. It's a lot more complicated. But for instance, let's do this example. Let's find an equation of the quadratic function whose vertex is 2, 0, and it passes through this point. Let's find, maybe instead of this comes out a little bit better. So now, okay, so we're going to find the quadratic function here. This was a typo, sorry about that. Okay, so if the vertex is 2, 0, this is saying hk. Again, this is the vertex. This is 2, 0. So if these two are the same, that implies h must be 2 and k must be 0. So in other words, we have f of x, we have as a times x, the h becomes 2 squared, k is 0, so really we shouldn't write 0 here, but it's okay to do that now, although we can just write it like this. But now the question is, okay, wait a minute, what about this a here? How do we get that? Well, remember, we know it has to pass through the point 1, 3. But what does that really mean, though? What that means is when x is 1, then the function value has to be 3. In other words, since it passes through 1, 3, we know that f of 1 has to be 3. Has to be. Okay? Again, that's because 1, 3 here, the graph passes through that point. Okay, so from here, let's see if this helps us. So 3 is a times 1 minus 2. So all I did here was I replaced x with 1, right? And f of 1 has to be 3, so f of 1, I replaced it with 3. That's all I did. We know, in other words, when x is 1, f of x has to be 3. That's all I did here. Okay, so now what? Well, here we have 3, we have a, 1 minus 2 is negative 1 squared, but negative 1 squared is just 1, so the right-hand side is really the same as just a times 1, which is still a. We have 3, so now we know actually that a has to be 3. So from here we can get f of x. We get f of x is just a is 3 times x minus 2 squared. And that's our quadratic function. Okay, so here's another example I just added. Now we're going to find the quadratic function whose vertex is 2, 4, and passes through this point 4, 7. Okay, well, the vertex, so again, what we're going to use here is the standard form, which is this here as before. And again, in this form, hk is the vertex. Excuse me, let me just put it on the other side. So the vertex here is hk. All right, so in this case, our vertex has to be 2, 4. So that tells us h has to be 2, k has to be 4. Okay, well, so let's plug that in. We get f of x has to be a times x minus 2 squared plus 4. Okay, so that's good. How do we get a? We need another point on the graph. But we do know another point on the graph, 4, 7. So if 4, 7, if the graph passes through point 4, 7, again, that means f of 4 has to be 7. So in other words, so we have f of 4 must be 7. Okay, well, let's use that. We get 7 is f of 4, which is a times 4 minus 2 squared plus 4. Okay, so again, on the right-hand side here, this is f of 4, right? F of 4, we're replacing x by 4, and that has to equal to 7. So that's how we got this equation. Okay, so let's see if we can, this will help us. 7 is going to be a, 4 minus 2 is 2 squared plus 4. Okay, so what is this going to be? Well, 2 squared we know is 4, so we're going to get a times 4 plus 4, and that's all 7 is equal to that. Well, let's subtract. Subtracting, again, we're solving for a. These cancel. We get 3 is a times 4. So we want a, so we divide by 4. These cancel, so we get a has to be 3/4. So altogether, see if I can fit it over here, f of x, oh boy, it's 3/4. I might not be able to fit it, but I'll try. X minus 2 squared plus 4. I think I just fit it. So that's what our f of x is.